regardless of which program you are applying to, go through some kind of an interview process, and in that process you will be posed with certain kinds of personal questions. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of our strategies for answering those kinds of personal questions authentically, enthusiastically, and reflectively. First, hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Klebe, and I'm an admissions expert at BeMo. So we work with students in any number of different venues where you might receive questions like this. Again, if you're going into med school, you might find this kind of question in a med school interview. Certainly it comes up in interviews for any number of different kinds of programs. It comes up in multiple mini interviews, Casper, sometimes even in secondary essays. And so a personal question is something that asks you to reflect on something that you've personally gone through. So sometimes they'll ask about your strengths or weaknesses. Sometimes they'll ask about times that you came into conflict with others, maybe with a superior, a time when you had to resolve conflict between two peers or two friends, or even asking about what kinds of extracurricular activities you enjoy outside of school. And so my discussion today is based on a session that I did with a student earlier today, and it proved to be a really interesting exercise that I think really emphasizes how to most effectively strategize when answering these questions. So there should be some kind of strategy behind your answer, and that strategy needs to be highlighting the kinds of skills that your program or your future profession is seeking, those qualities or soft skills that aren't easily measured by things like your grade point average or your performance on standardized tests. So the question we were working with today was one that I mentioned earlier: what kinds of extracurricular activities this student enjoyed and how they connected to the profession he was aspiring to get to. In this case, it was medicine, but of course this is valid in any number of different venues. And so he gave me his answer, and I thought it was a really great answer, but he ended up second guessing himself during our feedback session. So in these interview prep sessions, we'll go through a full-length mock interview, and then we'll come together at the end to give feedback, to talk through the answers, think about how to really strategically hone in on particular kinds of qualities or kinds of answers and things like that, but all completely tailored to the student's individual experiences, perspectives, priorities, and things like that. So when he was answering the question about his extracurricular activity, he talked about a video game that he was very, very fond of, a real-time strategy game that was sort of a warfare type game where you have to control your own group's armies against those of others. Now, this is a game that he'd been playing online with others for 10 to 15 years. He has followed the news and the trends. There are tournaments around this particular game that he's always watching to learn better strategies and things like that. And he talked a lot about the complexity of the game itself, the need for real manual dexterity to be able to quickly move his armies wherever they needed to go, the sort of creativity necessary to be able to adapt on the spot to new situations, to the moves of others that maybe can't be anticipated, and to the fact that this is something that he's passionate about and therefore committed to. This is a game that's been around for a really, really long time. A lot of people have played it and then stopped playing it, so there's a much smaller community now playing this game than there was previously. And so I thought that this highlighted some really great qualities. Yeah, absolutely. That manual dexterity, that hand-eye coordination on a very sort of practical level is absolutely necessary. The kinds of critical thinking that's necessary, the kinds of adaptability and resilience that are necessary to keep up and become sort of a professional level player of a real-time strategy game like this, absolutely applicable to medicine, and emphasizing that this is, something that he has genuinely demonstrated some kind of persistence to or commitment to. And of course, whatever you're aspiring to go into for school, that's going to be your lifelong career. And you need to be able to demonstrate that, where others may not have that resiliency to continue, you'll be able to, because it's something that you're dedicated to, something that you're passionate about. And so when he was giving this answer, the enthusiasm sort of radiated off of him. I could tell that he was genuinely interested in this, and I thought he made a compelling case for why it was a worthwhile thing to discuss in the context of a question like this. But then when we got to the feedback session, he had mentioned that he had been sort of going back and forth between this option and running. He's also a runner, so he does a lot of running. And he wanted to know sort of which would be better to use. And I don't think that's the best way to address that kind of question. And what I mean by that is, I wouldn't say that one of those activities is necessarily more valuable than the other. They're completely different kinds of activity. Certainly, when you are a runner, there are a lot of things that you need to know and develop in terms of manual dexterity and coordination and perseverance and adaptability and resilience and all of those things. The same kinds of qualities were evident in both responses, but there was a big difference in terms of how he was approaching the question between this answer that was just full of life and engagement, and his eyes sort of lit up talking about it, and that kind of enthusiasm is really contagious, versus, I was also thinking about running because I also run. And obviously, he's committed to this. It's something he's done for a while. You certainly don't become a runner if you're not committed to it. It's not something that's for everyone. But that same light didn't show up in his eyes. And so we talked about why either one actually demonstrates quite effectively the experiences that he wants to convey, the qualities that he wants to make known to the interviewer, and that there is this idea that one of those is going to be considered a better activity than the other. But I think there's not that same kind of social stigma. What's really important is those qualities and that passion, right? That enthusiasm. And there's also something to be said for thinking about activities, and if you're still, way in advance of actually putting your application together, thinking about activities that you might want to take up that will set you apart from other people. Right? For extracurricular activity, most people have sports, and that's absolutely fine. Obviously, there are all sorts of wonderful lessons that are learned in playing sports, both individually and at the level of teamwork and collaboration with others and following the guidance of superiors, all sorts of great qualities there. And I would never tell someone not to say that if that's what they are passionate about. That's the big difference here. Again, either of those kinds of activities, the video game or the running, those would be great. Sports are awesome. Artistic pursuits, also wonderful. Any of those things are fine as long as you're using them and you can authentically reflect on them in a way that demonstrates those key qualities and competencies that are sought in candidates in your field. Neither of them is necessarily better than the other, but one thing that is going to come through really clearly is your genuine enthusiasm, your genuine excitement, your genuine passion for what you're doing. So if you're in early stages and you can find some of those extracurricular activities that genuinely speak to your heart and your passion, then absolutely follow them. And then when you're putting your application together, draw on them. When you're getting ready for your interviews, draw on them. That's fantastic. But don't think that one kind of activity is necessarily better than another simply because of what the activity is, right? Certainly video gaming is a complex issue and one in which there, is no lack of critical reflection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a less worthwhile activity somehow. What matters is those qualities. What matters is what you see yourself getting out of it and how effectively you can convey to your interviewer or to your reviewer that you did genuinely develop those qualities. But if you're doing that strategically and you're speaking from the heart, from a place of genuine enthusiasm, As I said, that enthusiasm is contagious. I get excited about all kinds of things that I don't know anything about or that I have no experience with, simply because I get to see students reflecting on them and I see their passion. And I'm sure all of our consultants at BeMo would say the same. I don't need to understand or appreciate an activity in the same way that you do to be able to appreciate your appreciation for it and your enthusiasm and your ability to show how it demonstrates key qualities. So the overall takeaway here is, when you're thinking through those personal kinds of questions, there's some strategy to putting together your answer, making sure that you're hitting those key qualities. But you also want to make sure that you're not sort of silencing your own passion. Manufactured enthusiasm is very easy to read. It will make you come off as inauthentic, as fake or wooden, and you certainly don't want that. So if there's something you're truly passionate about, start tearing away at it a little bit. Pull it apart into its pieces. What kinds of skills or qualities do you get to refine by engaging in that activity? That's what's going to make for a strong and compelling answer, regardless of what the activity is itself. So I hope that this was helpful and that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do go ahead, like it, share it with a friend who might find it useful. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our videos on YouTube, follow us on all the other social media channels. And of course, you can always feel free to comment with any questions that you might have. If you'd like us to help you with your application or interview preparation or any other stage of the admissions process, please follow the link that should appear either above or below this video and click Get Started Here to see our full range of prep programs and schedule a free consultation. We'll set you up with one of our admissions experts to answer any questions you might have and get you started on your preparations. We have programs to suit any of your needs, and we are happy to work with you to determine which plan will support you most effectively. Thank you so very much for your time. Take care, and I will see you next time.